Welcome to Book 2 in the Horrors and Hoagies series, Tortured Souls. In this, we will cover Chapter 15. We encourage you to immerse yourself in the exciting events that unfold. From thrilling action scenes to heart-pumping moments of suspense, Tortured Souls is sure to keep you on the edge of your seat. We appreciate your support and hope that you continue to enjoy the journey we have in store for you. Chapter 15, Unlikely Counsel.
Thomas's kindness had given Siddiqui the only meal he had in the past 2 days. His pharaoh had not dined near him, but Siddiqui realized he had no money. His pharaoh spent the last of his resources. He had a lot of problems on his mind. How would he manage to pay the rent for his business? How would he feed himself and pay for his mother's medical bills? The stress had become too much for him. He had forgotten where he had left his bus pass. Last night, he had missed the last bus of the day and spent the night on a bench. As the first rays of dawn appeared, he realized how bad he looked. His suit was disheveled and stained, his hair was messy and summoned him for a long time, so he had taken the opportunity to care for personal matters. Regrettably, his situation was dire. He found himself homeless due to his inability to pay. New York landlords were known for harshness, and his landlord was one of the worst. He had been one day late on his rent and had returned home to find his meager belongings discarded on the curb outside his apartment. Local vagabonds had stolen his last few cherished possessions. Afterward, he approached his favorite. His hands were dirty. He looked homeless and would remain so if Lord Lukeman didn't help him. He noticed a peculiar sound emanating from a nearby spot on the bench. It was a unique noise, with a hint of plant fibers mixed in. The sound reminded him of his mother wringing out greens for their meals. The thought of food made his stomach growl, drowned out by a fancy car driving away. Siddiqui was preoccupied with his troubles, but a nearby soft humming voice caught his attention. He saw a young boy in an outlandish outfit devouring a massive sandwich. Siddiqui was utterly bewildered. The way the boy spoke, with an exaggerated Bronx accent and theatrical mannerisms, was quite amusing. It was like listening to a radio show host. Siddiqui couldn't help but find humor in the unintentional comedy of the situation.
"Hey, mister, have you seen any birds around here? You know, the pigeons? I haven't seen a pigeon since yesterday evening, and I'm starting to wonder if they've all left town."
The boy asked, rubbing his chin thoughtfully. His gesture only added to the ridiculousness of his words. Siddiqui glanced around, trying to ease the boy's concerns. Normally, the empty court across from the diner would be full of groups of birds in the mornings. All he had to do was look for them, but there were no pigeons in sight. He searched the roof ledges and power lines, but they were empty. He had never seen this area without those troublesome birds before. The only evidence of their presence was the abundance of white stains under their favorite perches. As Siddiqui's confusion grew, the boy's expression turned serious. He pulled out a thick cigar, lit it with a forceful breath, and puffed on it. Siddiqui gave him a stern look, trying to ignore the panic-inducing sight and focus on his thoughts.
Well, look what we have here, sir. It's a real puzzler. I had been tracking those birds for a week before they vanished into thin air last night. Those sneaky feathered criminals flew away when I got too close to someone important. Someone like you."
With a dramatic gesture, the lit cigar thrust inches away from Siddiqui's face. The boy's accusing finger pointed straight at the hefty man's chest. At this point in his week, Siddiqui couldn't be surprised anymore. The birds were gone, the pharaoh of Anubis was about to conquer the world, he was broke, and now this strange kid was accusing him of nonsense. He didn't bother to flinch at the accusation, choosing to entertain it only because he had nothing else to do until his master summoned him.
"Do you think I scared of the army of birds that call this place home?"
Siddiqui asked. A triumphant grin stretched across the kid's face.
"Yes, sir. You must have sent them away to prevent me from talking to them. You told them to fly the co-op. Oh, wait, do pigeons live in coops or only chickens?"
Siddiqui sighed, wondering what information had been kept from him. He questioned which secrets were so important to hide from his expert investigation. The kid's ego inflated at the mention of his supposed expertise.
You think so? Wait until Da boss finds out.
He exclaimed, disregarding the questions in his newfound excitement. As Siddiqui observed the boy's display, he couldn't help but remember his nephews. The genuine happiness on their faces during birthdays and reunions mirrored what he saw in the boy. It was a pleasant sight.
If I were truly guilty of this wrongdoing, wouldn't I be the potential villain in this situation?
He pondered.
If I am a person of interest, it would be expected for detectives to inquire about my associates.
A simple wave of the kid's hand dismissed any concerns about the theoretical facts of their conversation.
Nah, you seem like an honest guy. Answer me this.
The kid leaned in so close Siddiqui could feel the heat and smell sulfur emanating from him.
Why did you or one of your hoodlums send those birds to attack the sandwich shops in town?
It was overwhelming. Siddiqui's mind tried to ignore the inconsistencies, but he succumbed and burst into laughter. He couldn't remember the last time he had laughed so hard. It felt incredibly satisfying. Once he regained composure, Siddiqui placed a hand on the kid's thin shoulder and looked him in the eyes.
I'm not the birdman you're looking for. He might have flown away as well.
They both burst into laughter again, their contagious mirth waking the entire neighborhood as the morning dawned. The young boy lifted his hat and took a bite of his sandwich before stuffing the rest of it into his mouth. Siddiqui couldn't believe what he was seeing and began to panic. The boy noticed and tried to apologize, knocking himself on the forehead with his fist. He explained he was only peeking and didn't mean to intrude. Siddiqui's horror grew as the boy transformed into a monstrous creature with vines writhing beneath its skin and a pumpkin-like mouth filled with jagged teeth. He felt the creature drawing him in, ready to consume everything he knew and leave only madness and despair in its wake. Siddiqui was rattled as he found himself standing at the counter of his beloved diner. The friendly morning matron served him a steaming cup of black coffee on a saucer, its delightful aroma instantly lifting his spirits and making him smile.
It must have only been a nightmare.
He pondered silently. Thankfully, he was still alive and well. The terrifying pumpkin creature, with an eerie jack-o'-lantern face barely revealing its madness, must have been a figment of his imagination. He looked around and realized that the diner was full of ordinary customers. He froze as he caught a glimpse of orange in his peripheral vision. He desperately hoped whatever it was wouldn't notice him if he stayed still. His skin turned clammy, and his heart raced as if it wanted to escape. The creature leaned on the counter, its gaze fixed on him. It gathered its thoughts before striking up a conversation.
Hey there, sir. I apologize for that. Would you like food to go with your coffee? It's on me.
It reshaped its vine-like appendage to point at the cup before him. He swallowed hard, his eyes slowly following the creature's finger to the cup. Half expecting it to be a terrifying surprise, he was relieved to find it was just like the other customers' cups in the diner. Struggling to moisten his dry throat, he mustered the courage to speak.
What are you?
He managed to whisper. The creature formed a twisted smile and extended its plant-like hand for a handshake.
I'm Jackie, sandwich connoisseur, an expert detective in training, and kind soul at this early hour, at your service.
The voice had not changed, and the demeanor was as it was at the bus stop. But it had transformed into a creature with a pumpkin head and a body of shifting vines that aped at the human form, filling its ridiculous attire in place of the child's former features. With a hint of craziness, Siddiqui cautiously extended his hand to the creature so as to not offend it. After a brief contact, the creature withdrew its appendage and used it to grab the matron's attention. To disregard the creature beside him, Siddiqui focused on his coffee. He lifted the cup and savored the exquisite darkness of the brew, a true masterpiece. As the liquid coursed through his veins, a comforting calmness came to his frazzled nerves. The matron hurried over and scribbled Jackie's order on a worn-out notepad, a hearty breakfast platter for his new acquaintance and a breakfast sandwich. The sandwich seemed to baffle the creature. Jackie pondered about the order and asked Siddiqui if eggs could replace meat in the sandwich. The woman responded casually, unfazed by the sight of the monster, saying,
"Han, there's sausage in there too."
She appeared impatient and tapped her foot while waiting for Jackie to decide. Eventually, the creature decided and eagerly awaited his sandwich like a child anticipating a discovery. Siddiqui couldn't believe his luck as an overflowing plate was set before him. Despite his protests, the pumpkin ignored him and gestured to the matron, saying,
"Put his meal on my tab, would ya? Thanks."
Siddiqui was confused. It was unbelievable that a generous stranger had treated him to a meal for the second time. He was well aware people often judged him for his appearance, but time and time again, he proved them wrong by achieving remarkable things. This unusual being may not be as dreadful as it appeared. Siddiqui slumped in his chair, taking a risk by entertaining the idea of a pumpkin monster while eating.
"So, you're a pumpkin monster?"
He asked tentatively. Jackie responded with a cheerful drumming of his fingers on the bar.
"I guess so. You broke the veil, so get ready for some weird stuff,"
he said casually. Siddiqui was shocked by the response and asked for clarification.
"What's the veil?"
Jackie explained that the boss and some vampires say it is the barrier that keeps humans from seeing supernatural beings.
"It's not my first choice of name, but it's better than the monster hiding, mystical, magical barrier o' doom,"
he joked. The being possessed a lively spirit, its physical form in sync with its speech as if it were a native.
"It's strange, you know, most folks prefer to see the world as they want it to be, and their minds oblige by painting that picture for them,"
it explained.
"The boss believes that if everyone could see the truth, chaos and confusion would ensue."
Siddiqui gulped down a mouthful of coffee and munched on some crispy hash browns before asking,
"Then why am I able to see you?"
Jackie raised his shoulders.
"I was snooping around in your thoughts, trying to figure out if you were a wizard or cultist. You're soaked in negative energy, and it's recent. I thought you were using it to control the thieving birds in town. After a few seconds, I realized you weren't the person I was looking for, but I must have accidentally crossed some wires when I withdrew."
"So you're not chasing me to eat my soul?"
The question was straightforward, but Siddiqui thought he could ask it.
"No way, sir, soul food is too spicy for me. Besides, I'm not the type to devour souls. If you were a sandwich, you would have been afraid for your life, but all those bones, blood, and screaming aren't my thing."
Siddiqui appreciated the straightforwardness. The madness now allowed him to take the conversation in stride. He rallied, turned on his stool, and extended his hand for another handshake.
"My name is Siddiqui. It's a wonderful oddity to meet you, Jackie."
Jackie took his hand and shook it heartily.
"Nice to meet you, Mr. Siddiqui. Excuse me, but you seem to have a lot of bad luck."
The overweight man continued to stuff his face with food while noticing how shabby he looked.
"You know, my new friend, your concern is touching.
He said,
My new boss expects everything from me. I spent every penny I had to prepare for his arrival and meet his increasing demands. And now, he gives me menial tasks while I struggle to pay my bills and get a decent meal."
Siddiqui felt a sense of relief as he shared his troubles with someone, anyone. It felt good despite everything.
"Sounds like a tough situation. Why doesn't he care for you, considering how much you give him?"
"It's complicated,"
Siddiqui replied.
"He's a wealthy man from my family's homeland. My family has loyally served him for generations. I grew up believing we were destined to serve alongside a king. But now that king has entered my life, I'm treated like a foolish lackey. The situation has ruined me."
Siddiqui felt a twinge of guilt for admitting it, but he couldn't deny how mistreated and unappreciated he felt. He could survive without gratitude but couldn't survive without food and shelter.
"He's like a magician or something like that, right? I can't remember the last time I heard of no magician without a tacky sense of style and flair. Rooms of shiny doodads all over? Things he thinks make him more special than other people?"
Siddiqui nodded.
"I do not think he even knows what he possesses. He is so wealthy, he would never lower himself to worry about trivial matters, so he relies on others to do menial tasks."
Jackie gave a nod in agreement.
So he's clueless about money, except when he wants you to spend all of yours on him? You seem like a decent guy in a tough spot. Not many guys like you in this city, buddy. Based on how you were and how you describe your boss, he sounds like a jerk. Jerks don't come across as noble or kingly, but I understand you feel loyal for your reasons, and I won't argue. Let me tell you something. I know a magical solution that can save you and get you back on your feet without any hassle.
Siddiqui was engrossed by the pumpkin, eagerly anticipating the creature's plan. Jackie, on the other hand, rambled on about a cunning idea.
You're a clever guy. I bet you can walk into a room and instantly know the value of all those trinkets, right? So why not borrow a few and pawn them off? Abracadabra, you'll have some quick cash, and when the owner realizes and pays up, you can buy back the items and return them or sneak them back in. No harm done, and everyone gets to eat.
Siddiqui was surprised by Jackie's lack of morals. Such a bold act of theft would surely lead to his demise. Siddiqui shook his head and tried to make Jackie understand.
Stealing from one's master is a grave sin with severe consequences. You don't understand.
Jackie tilted his head and twirled his fingers on the bar.
I get it, stealing is wrong, but I don't want you to steal anything. I want you to borrow. It seems like he's the one stealing from you, right? You had a good job and now you're broke? No one will hold him accountable if you end up on the streets, huh? But let's face it, your options aren't great, are they? Does this guy demand expensive things? You paid until you were broke. He drained you of everything while he sat on his riches. So now that you've done everything he asked, you have two choices. Leave him and find a new gig, or he has to pay up to keep you around. You could walk away from him and find better work somewhere else.
I have to serve my master, Jackie. I don't have a choice. My family is bound to serve.
He replied, a sense of despair settling upon him, causing his shoulders to slump. It may be his fate to be used and discarded by his pharaoh. Jackie noticed that Siddiqui's slumped posture had returned. Jackie gave him a gentle pat on the arm and tried to offer some assistance.
Hey buddy, if you want to continue working for this guy, you can't afford to be on the streets like a beggar. Everyone needs to eat, like birds need to fly and fish need to swim. So here's an idea. Do whatever it takes to get the money you need, and then talk to him about the overdue payment he owes you. Once he pays you back, you can stay afloat and keep him happy. He might even appreciate your creative thinking when assigning you all those crazy tasks. Trust me, my boss does the same with me.
The mention of Siddiqui's employer piqued his curiosity, so he couldn't help but ask.
Who is your boss?
The pumpkin man perked up, reaching into his jacket and pulling out a slightly worn business card. He proudly slid it over to Siddiqui and began talking about his boss.
My boss is Dom. He's the one who runs our detective agency. We take on cases for both humans and animals in this town. Business isn't always booming, but we manage to get by. Sometimes I have to borrow a few things here and there to keep us afloat, but I always make sure to pay off my debts. We've got each other's backs.
Jackie's attention was grabbed by the egg, cheese, and sausage sandwich gliding down the bar that stopped before him. Siddiqui couldn't help but admire the sandwich and envy the special bond it seemed to have with its boss. He longed for a similar connection with Lukman, who seemed to prioritize deadly Germans and mutilated thralls over his loyal servant.
This creature may be onto something.
Siddiqui pondered.
Without money to fulfill my duties, I'm bound to fail.
The pharaoh had brought several crates of decorations for his new home, and perhaps Siddiqui could sell a few small items to support his cause. With determination, Siddiqui nodded to himself. He was going to do it. If he hurried, he could pawn a few things before noon and gather enough money to stay afloat until the ceremony.
Thank you, Jackie.
He silently expressed his gratitude.
Your gift of food has been a soothing relief.
When Jackie didn't respond and instead savored the sandwich with utmost delight, Siddiqui realized his words might as well have been spoken to a brick wall. Seeing an opportunity to leave, he rose from the stool and exited the diner. After finishing the scrumptious sandwich, Jackie regained consciousness and signaled for the check. As he glanced at the vacant stool beside him, he couldn't help but feel uneasy about the ruby-eyed hound that had been tailing Siddiqui before joining him on the bench. Jackie hoped that Siddiqui would be safe from whatever danger was lurking around the corner.